Hi guys, this is Gwen from the Champaign Urbana Crochet Coral Reef project, and we're here to look at this little pouch form inspired by a urchin creature. It was fun to make, and you should make one also. You can follow along with me. I'm going to show you a tutorial that would allow you to make something fairly similar or almost exact to this, and which is basically a sphere with a hyperbolic ruffle attached to it. Okay, let's get started. We are going to start with a magic circle, which is magic because you don't end up with a hole in the middle of your form. If you look really closely at this one, I actually didn't use a magic circle and there's a little hole there. We're gonna do it even more perfectly. Okay, so I'm gonna start by laying my yarn over 3 fingers so that the tail of the yarn is coming towards my body, wrapping the yarn over, and then making an X. So now I've wrapped the yarn so that I have an X. I'm holding on to the tail of the X with my thumb. I'm going to hold on to the working yarn with my pinky. I've got that captured there with my pinky. This is what it looks like on the back, 2 parallel lines. Okay. Make sure that's very clearly an X. I'm going to slide my hook under the right leg of the X, turn it over to grab the left leg of the X, pull it through underneath, and twist it. I'm then going to slide that around so that now I'm looking at the back of my hand. I'm going to give myself a little bit of slack. I'm going to grab the left side of these parallel lines, and I'm going to take this yarn underneath this loop right there. So sliding that yarn under that loop, like so. Then I'm going to gently remove my hand. What I should now have is a large open loop. The tail is twisted into the loop, and I'm going to untwist that. So you can see here, I've got loop, tail, working yarn. I'm now going to be crocheting into this loop. I'm going to pretend like this tail is attached to the side of the loop. So when I crochet, I'll be crocheting around that tail as well as the side of the loop. So to do that, I'm going to crochet 6 single crochets into this loop. That's 1 single crochet. Again, holding this tail against that loop side so that it is as if this was one piece of yarn. So two single crochets. All right, this is what you should have at this point. A row of 6 single crochets with a little bit of a tail and your working yarn. I am now going to do the magic part, which consists of gently tugging on this tail of the yarn. If I've done it correctly, my 6 single crochets should start to squeeze together, closing up that hole, leaving a perfect little shape just like that. It's almost a full circle, and it will be a full circle when I crochet this end to this end. To do that, I'm going to use a slip stitch. So a slip stitch is a step shorter than a single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into the first single crochet, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. So pull through 1 and then 2. All right. So now I have a perfect little circle. There should be 6 stitches on this circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. I am now going to double the amount of stitches. It's important for me to mark each time that I make a round. I need to put some kind of marker in, or I won't be able to figure out where I started my round and where it ends, because you'll see it starts to be a bit of a spiral. This is especially true if you're newer to crochet and you're less familiar with what a slip stitch looks like as opposed to a single crochet. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my marker in here. And a bobby pin works really well. You can use a little piece of yarn, thread. We're gonna use a paper clip today because that's what I had on hand. And that will tell me that that is where I started. Okay, so I'm going to start increasing by putting 2 single crochets in each of my existing 6 stitches. So 1, 2, putting 2 in each stitch. And this should give me a total of 12 stitches. Alright, and the location of my paper clip tells me that I am back where I started. Alright, now I'm going to count my stitches and make sure that it's a good idea to count your stitches to keep an eye on where you are in your round. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stitches. Perfect. All right, so this is my second round. Next round, I'm going to be alternating between putting 2 stitches in each stitch and 1 single crochet and a single crochet. So essentially round 2, the pattern is 2 single crochet, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, 1 single crochet. Or you can just remember that to increase at the correct rate, to keep your thing flat, you need to make sure that you're adding a single crochet to the pattern each time you start a new round. Okay. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to slip stitch into this next row. So again, a slip stitch is just pulling 2 through 2 loops. Now I am starting on my next round. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 and 1 for the increase. Okay, and I'm going to pause there to count my rounds. Okay, so I double checked that I have 18 stitches here because I forgot to put my marker in, my little paper clip here. Wow, it's magnetic, really, it's fascinating. So I forgot to put my marker in, which means that I need to know when my round ends. And the only way to do that, if I don't use a marker, is to count my stitches. So I stopped and I counted that I do indeed have 18 stitches here, because I'm on round 3 and I'm adding 6 stitches each time. So on round 4, I will then have a total of 24 stitches. So if you get lost, you can just count your stitches. It might be a little bit easier though just to use a marker. It's up to you, whichever is easier, makes more sense to you. I will use my marker again this time so I don't get lost. And I'm just gonna attach it in here. There we go. Actually, well, I'm actually going to put the marker in after I do this chain. So again, I'm chaining 1 and I'm going to slip stitch. Now, you don't have to chain and slip stitch. You could just continue to around in a spiral. The reason that I am chaining and slip stitching instead of just spiraling around continuously is, let me go ahead and complete this stitch before I complete my sentence. It's helpful for creating a more perfect sphere or a more perfect flat round, because the spiral, you'll notice if you just continuously spiral around, has a kind of nautilus look to it. It always looks somewhat incomplete, as if the row is always almost finished. If you do it with if you chain 1 and then slip stitch, you'll have a more perfect circle. So that's an option. You can try it both ways. All right, so I am ready now to move on. I'm going to insert my marker so that I know where I am. This paper clip is kind of a funny marker. I think you're better off using a little piece of yarn, or a bobby pin is what I really like to use. Okay. So now I am going to do 2 single crochets, and then I'm going to single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in 1. So that's going to look like this. Single crochet, single crochet, so a single stitch in each stitch, and then now I will put 2 stitches in this stitch. Single crochet in a single crochet. You can always fast forward through this part, but it might be helpful to see it a couple of times. And then 2 in 1. Oh, I bet we are done. So I'm going to count my stitches and see which row I'm at. Okay, so I paused again to make sure that I have all of the stitches accounted for. I made sure that I actually have 24 stitches here. And it can get a little bit tricky when you are doing the slip stitch, when you're chaining and slip stitching each round, because you'll find that you need to make sure that the next stitch you do after you chain and slip stitch is the increase stitch. That is, you're going on and putting 2 stitches in a single crochet immediately after you slip stitch, after you chain and slip stitch. So let's look at, this is 24 stitches, and if I unravel this one, I'll show you that I could tell that I had come to the end of my round, because this stitch right here looks weird. There's something strange about the space underneath it. In fact, there isn't quite the same kind of space. So like if we look at this one, pull that out a little bit, there's a more normal space under that stitch. If I look at this space, there's sort of two spaces and a line going through the center. And if I look at it from the top, where this is a normal crochet V, this one is kind of a miniature version of that. And you see it's shorter in height also. So I can tell from this weird stitch anatomy right here that I have found the chain and slip stitch from the previous row, which works the same as marking it. You know, marking it may be better for you though if you find it hard to tell the difference between this and what's happening here. All right, so to crochet into my slip stitch, I am going to go into this hole, to show you with my scissors here, right there. I'll be going right under that one, and then I'll be skipping over to this single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet into that. And I know that it's only a single crochet and a single crochet because I was on my 23rd stitch here, so I know I only need one more to complete the pattern for 24 stitches. Now, you can see that there's this little V right there. It's kind of as if it's almost another single crochet, but it's not quite, and my single crochet that I just put in there is covering it. I'm going to ignore that and go on to the next stitch when I start my next round. So I'll be making a chain, and then I'm going to slip stitch into that next real stitch. So not into there, but into here. If this is complicated, don't worry about the slip stitching and chaining. You can always just spiral up by continuing to single crochet in the next single crochet and just marking each time you get to a new round. That works just as well. Okay, so now my pattern last time was 2 single crochets, or rather 2 in 1, and then a single and a single, and a single and a single. Now I'm going to be doing 2 single crochets in a single crochet and 3 singles in singles. So just to show you what that means, here is 2. That's 2 single crochets in 1. And now I'll do 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and 1 single crochet. A total of 3 singles before I get to another increase. Now I'm going to increase again with 2 in 1. And then do 3, placing a single crochet and a single crochet 3 times. Each time I'm spreading out where the increase is. And you can actually see where you're increasing on your flat round by noticing where the corner is. So this starts to look a little bit like a hexagon, and that's always true. The way people avoid this becoming a more exaggerated corner is by switching where the increase is. So people who are really advanced will put this increase in different places. They'll sort of rotate it around. Don't worry about that right now. Just pay attention to the fact that you can actually see where your increases are because they make little corners in your piece. All right, I am going to go ahead and complete the round, count my stitches, and then we'll talk about what comes next. Okay, so I have now completed the 5th round. I just single crocheted into my slip stitch. So I'm going to undo that and show you that again, just so that I'm clear. This is that weird looking slip stitch and chain right here. And I inserted my hook in this hole right there. I counted and I made sure that I had 30 stitches because 30 divided by 6 is 5, and I'm on my 5th round. And I love math. Never knew there'd be so much math in crochet. Okay, so we're on the 5th round. What this means is that now I can continue to add, I can continue to increase if I want my flat round to get bigger and bigger. And that's going to determine the diameter of your little shape here. So if I wanted a bigger one, I would just keep adding. You should be aware though that the equation of adding 6 stitches each time will eventually not work. This is a crazy thing about flat rounds. At some point it's going to start to get too big and you will need to increase more than 6. So you'll need to actually start increasing. Maybe it'd be something like single crochet and single crochet, single crochet and single crochet, and then 2 in 1 again. So if you find that your form, as you're making it bigger, starts to cup up, it's just because you're not increasing enough. You may have to add some. But this is going to be where we stop now. We're going to start to go up now. So in order to stop getting bigger and start going up, we're just going to single crochet in each one of these 30 stitches once. So just single crochet and single crochet all the way around your circle. Okay, so I have single crocheted in each single crochet all the way around the circle. Don't forget when you start that to chain and then slip stitch to start your row. Again, it's not that big a deal. If you forget, you just may not be able to tell where your row begins and ends if you're not using a marker. So I now still have 30 stitches. You can see it's starting to cup up. To continue, I will now continue putting a single crochet in each single crochet all the way around for as many rounds as I had during my increase. So I did that for 5 rounds when I was increasing, which means I'm going to do 5 rounds all the way around just single crocheting in each single crochet. Okay, so I've done a few more rounds, and remember, to make this a perfect sphere, I would do the same number of rounds that I did increasing in the middle here. I've done about 4 rounds in the middle. I could do one more, but I think I'm going to go ahead and start decreasing now to squeeze in the top here. So it's going to go from being as wide as it is and start shrinking in. I will now decrease for around the same number of rounds that I did in the middle or for the increase, which is, 4 to 5. Because I don't want to close this up completely, I want to leave this little hole in the middle. It's probably going to be more like 4 rounds. So that's the next step. And the way that I'm going to decrease is I'm going to reverse what I did when I was increasing. So with my last round, my 5th round, I was single crocheting 3 times and then putting 2 single crochets in one. What I'm going to do now is single crochet 3 times and then I'm going to decrease 1. So the way that is going to look is, and I am going to make sure that I chain and slip stitch before I do anything else. So just like that. And now I'm going to single crochet, single crochet, single crochet for 3. And now I'm going to decrease. And I decrease by inserting my hook in the next single crochet, pulling up a loop, and then normally I would yarn over and pull through 2. But instead I'm going to stop the stitch there, insert my hook into the next one, yarn over to pull up a loop. Now I have 3 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And what that's done is it has compressed 2 stitches into 1 stitch. Now go on, single crochet in single crochet 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to decrease again. I have 2 loops on my hook, put it in the following stitch for 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, go on single crochet, single crochet and single crochet, and my 3rd single crochet and single crochet, and then I'm going to decrease again, inserting my hook, pulling up a loop, so I have 2 loops on the hook, stopping that stitch and going into the next stitch, pulling up a loop for 3 loops on the hook, yarning over, pulling through all 3 loops. The rate at which you do that, or rather how many times you decrease around the circle, is going to impact how quickly it squeezes in. So you can play around with it decreasing more slowly or more quickly. That's up to you. To make the specific form that I'm making here, I'm attempting to replicate the rate of increase that I did at the bottom on the top, decreasing at the similar rate. But I could change that if I wanted to make a different funky shape. Another decrease. And here I am back to my chain and slip stitch. So I'm going to decrease using that slip stitch for my final decrease of the row. And then I am going to chain 1 and slip stitch again to mark this next row. Okay. All right, so next I'm going to continue to decrease in, and I will do a pattern of single crochet, decrease. Okay, that was my final decrease. I came back around. Now I am going to chain 1, slip stitch, okay, so for this round I'm going to single crochet and decrease every other one. So I'll be alternating between decreasing and single crochet. And then we'll see if that gets us close enough to the center to start increasing again to create this ruffled top. Okay, so the last round was the alternating pattern of decrease, single crochet. I still have about this much of a hole. The next thing I could do is I could either do the same pattern again, decreasing at that same rate, or if I'm trying to mirror what I did on the bottom, I would now decrease for every stitch. That's up to you. That's a stylistic or an artistic choice depending on what you want it to look like. If you want it to be smaller in the center there, you will need to continue to decrease. Otherwise, you could, from this point, start increasing. I think I'm going to do one last row of decreasing, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm at the point that if I continued to decrease, I would close up my hole, but I don't want to close the hole completely. I now want to start making the ruffle part here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of decreasing now, I'm going to just single crochet all the way around this little hole, putting 1 single crochet in each. And now it doesn't matter as much if I know where I am in my round, because I'm not attempting to keep it symmetrical at this point. I'm much more concerned with starting to create something that looks organic and hyperbolic. So I'm just going to spiral, which means I'm going to leave out the chain and chain and slip stitch step. I'm just going to single crochet all the way around the circle, not worrying about that. Once I get all the way around the circle, I'm starting to create a kind of neck. I'm going to start increasing again to widen the neck back up. So to increase, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 single crochets in each single crochet. And this is the part that I am kind of making up as I go, because you have the freedom to decide what that fluted part looks like. If you wanted it to stay skinny for longer, have a skinnier neck, then you could put a single crochet and then a double crochet alternating all the way around the circle. But I want it to open up more quickly, so I'm going to put 2 single crochets in each of my stitches around the circle. Starting to get something that looks like a nice little coin purse, a little drawstring purse. You could make it a drawstring purse just by weaving yarn around the neck and using it like a drawstring. Okay, so I've continued to increase every single round for about 5 or so rounds. Again, this is the part where you're going to make artistic decisions and decide how many rounds you want to increase and how fast. I was increasing at a consistent rate, putting 2 single crochets in each single crochet continuously around and around and around, doing it in a spiral instead of attempting to keep track of my rows by slip stitching, chaining and slip stitching. I'm at a point now where I want to increase my rate of increase. So I want to start to exaggerate this ruffle. And I'm going to do that to get something that gets closer to this by adding more stitches. So I could start doing something like 2 in one and then 3 single crochets in a single crochet alternating around. I think I'll probably do that. And then eventually I'll probably put 3 single crochets in each crochet. Okay, so I've started now crocheting 3 single crochets in every single crochet, which means that it's taking me a really long time to get around the circumference of the ruffle. But it also means that my shape here is starting to become hyperbolic really quickly, and it's creating these tight ruffles that are a really nice contrast to the smooth round bottom. Okay, so this is my little finished shape here. I've decided that these are enough ruffles. I could, of course, continue to triple crochet, put three single crochets in each single crochet around and around, making this ruffle bigger and bunchier if I wanted to. I like it kind of proportionate to the bottom there. So once I decide that I am finished, I can just slip stitch into the next stitch over, which again, just pulling through 2 loops without yarning over. And then I'm going to trim off the working end of my yarn and pull the yarn through the last loop, pull it tight and creates a little knot. And then I will take this end and weave it into the ruffled edge here. So that's usually something I would do with a yarn needle. You can also figure out how to do it with your hook by just pulling it back and forth. Once I'm satisfied that the tail is well hidden in there, I'll trim it. Similarly, I can weave in the end here and trim that for the bottom. But instead of trimming it, I think I'm just going to pull it inside the form in case I want to be able to connect it to something later. Sometimes I like to have this as an option to use as a connector. So I'll just tuck that inside the form. You can certainly cut it off too. The last step with this would be to use some polyfill, and if you wanted this to be really puffy, you could stuff polyfill down inside the form and that would fill it out. You could also put scrap yarn in there of the same color or a different color. Get creative with what you put in there, or you can let the form just be hollow. All right, there you have it. Cute little urchin-inspired pocket form.